You're listening to the Creative Impostor, episode 129. Welcome to the Creative Impostor. I'm Andrea Klunder, and it's been a little bit of a time since I have had a heart-to-heart with you, just me and you, one-on-one. I think it was episode 121 at the top of the year, something like that. In any case, it's been a little while, and I have a few things on my mind today that I want to share with you. I don't know about you, but at this moment, at the end of March 2021, beginning of April, I am feeling like it is time for a shift. It makes sense. It's springtime in the Midwest. That is what spring is. It's about those green little plants that are popping up out of the earth. It's about opening the windows for the first time in ages and doing some spring cleaning, clearing the dust. And whoa, has it been one long winter. I'm going to go ahead and categorize summer 2020 as winter, spring 2020 as winter. It was all winter as far as I was concerned for, pandemic reasons. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this shift that I am feeling so ready and desperate for. But I do also want to take a moment to acknowledge what is happening right now around the hashtag Stop Asian Hate in the Asian American communities and in regard to the shooting in Atlanta, Georgia. And I am not going to go too deep into it here because I don't think that I am the expert to be talking with you about this. But I do just want to mention a few resources if this is something that is top of mind for you and you are looking for some more ways to think about, talk about, process what is happening around this incident. And not just around this incident, but around the wave of anti-Asian sentiment that was propagated during 2020 specifically in the United States. Or if this is not top of mind, but you're feeling like, maybe this is something that I don't know enough about or I should pay more attention to, I want to just give you a few resources to check out. Number one, Beyond Reproach podcast. This is minisode 25, Stop Asian Hate. Also, Conversations with a Wounded Healer with Sarah Bueno, in which she is reading and referencing an article written by Sarah Suzuki. The episode is called Stop Psychoanalyzing Mass Shooters. NPR's Life Kit, talking with kids about anti-Asian racism. Culture Chat with Mimi Chan, episode 221, The Rise of Anti-Asian Hate Crimes Amidst COVID-19. And a In This Moment forthcoming episode releasing on April 6th from Pause on the Play, the title of which I don't know just yet. Also, for a non-podcast resource, I would encourage you to read an article that came out in The Guardian, based in the UK, by Marie Solis. It's called A Specific Kind of Racism, Atlanta Shootings Fuel Fears Over Anti-Sex Work Ideology. Of course, there are so many other resources and places to engage in this conversation, in this dialogue, but those are a few to get you started. And I will be linking to all of those in the show notes for this episode at thecreativeimpostor.com/129, and also in the description inside your podcast app for this episode. That being said, I want to now bring the conversation to something completely unrelated, which is that today I had a voice lesson. Well, not really a voice lesson, a voice coaching session. And this is significant to me because I have not had such a thing in more than 10 years, though it is something that I used to do regularly from the time that I was in high school through college into my 20s when I first moved to Chicago and was performing in music theater. And you probably know that I have a history with vocal performance, with opera, with musical theater, with using my voice to teach, with guiding yoga classes and meditation sessions, and now with podcasting. And I have even coached other podcasters on how to find more confidence, more freedom, more flexibility, and more expressiveness in their voice. And now in this moment in 2021, I have hit a wall where I don't feel like my voice is doing what I want it to be doing. It's not that anything is wrong, but as we are wrapping up this series on self-care on the Creative Impostor, I do have a few amazing conversations still left to share with you, but it has been a long series. And as hopefully we're turning the corner on the COVID-19 virus and pandemic and shelter in place, and I'm feeling more optimistic that we get to return to our lives, which we didn't leave our lives. We were there, but there were some aspects of our lives that we temporarily put on pause. We had to hit that defer button. And now we may be able to resume, but there's been this whole period of self-reflection and introspection and determining what is actually important to us and how we want to go about doing things and what things we want to return to and what things we want to leave behind forever in 2019 and before. And I feel like I am having all of these things come to a head where I'm realizing that I had a big T trauma in 2019. I'm not realizing that I had it. Of course, I knew that I had it, where I had a stage 0 breast cancer diagnosis, a mastectomy and reconstruction, and all of that surgery left me feeling the word is not broken. The word is not traumatized. I don't know what the word is, but 2019 sucked on so many levels for me around that. And it really dominated a lot of my energetic space. And of course, I still had to move forward and move through. And a lot of healing took place afterwards. And I had a lot of support on that healing. And by 2020, I was starting to feel more like myself finally. And then COVID-19, the pandemic hit, and I was tossed from one very personal tragedy to this other more collective tragedy. And it's a little bit of whiplash. And again, I've processed a lot of it. I'm doing well. I don't feel that anything terrible happened to me specifically during the past year. I feel very fortunate in that regard. And yet, here are two very different back-to-back traumas that occurred. And I hesitate to use the word trauma because, I don't know, it feels a little played out. It sort of feels like how mindfulness felt to me in the late 20-teens. Can I say 20-teens? Is that a correct reference? In any case, I have been feeling a little stuck. So though my business is really going well right now and I have so many creative projects in the works, though my shows, both Creative Impostor and Podcast Envy, have been growing, though my podcast mentoring program with high school students in Chicago, Power Your Story, has doubled. I now have 2 groups that I'm working with for a total of 32 students. Though my relationships with my family have actually gotten stronger over the pandemic, and my relationship with my partner has gotten even better and deeper and stronger. There's so much good, and yet there is something energetically that just is feeling stuck and sluggish and not quite right. I've started to feel old. And by that, I don't mean worrying about my age. I don't even mean the occasional gray hair popping out of my head. I just mean that my body feels sluggish. I mean that things feel difficult. And one of the manifestations of this that actually has deep psychological roots for me is that my voice feels tired. It feels weak. It feels restricted. And I don't like that. I don't want to think that here I am in my 40s and there's all this psychological programming from my opera days whereby when you are an aspiring opera singer, it is very clear that women have shorter careers than men. Big generalization, but it has to do with biology, with biochemistry, with physiology, a lot of female opera singers, by the time they hit their 30s, their career is already like peaking and possibly on its decline. And so there is this deep embedded psychology that like, oh, here I am in my 40s and I'm in my vocal decline. And did I really even fully explore the full potential of my voice? Could I have done so much more? Should I have recorded something at some point in time? What would that even be? And all this stuff just sort of was starting to percolate in my head. And so I decided to reach out for help. And some of you will remember way back when we did a series on the Creative Impostor exploring voice, I talked with Davin Youngs, and this is episode 82. And Davin is somebody who I have known, or who I should say I met long, long ago when we were both in college and studying classical singing. But we didn't really stay in touch. And then we reconnected at my yoga studio here in Chicago a couple of years ago. And I have been following him and his career and his work as an artist and as a voice coach and teacher ever since. And I don't know what I need, but I think Davin can help me. And so I reached out and I was like, blah, 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 blah. Here's all this stuff. Surgery, vocal restriction, don't know where to go artistically with my voice, want to do more than just podcasting, want to sing, but what to sing, trauma, fears about my aging female voice, all of that stuff. I just poured out to him and he was like, thank you for sharing all of that with me. Let's have a coaching session and see if working together is something that will be helpful. And I was like, cool. And we set up our voice coaching for today on Zoom. I've never received a voice coaching session via Zoom. So that's one, that's weird. And then two, the other thing that was weird was that there was something about this idea of a voice lesson, even though we were calling it a coaching, that slammed me back into the headspace that I was in back in those high school, college, early 20s years in which voice lessons were a means to an end. I don't think they started out that way necessarily in high school, though even in high school, when I asked my parents for voice lessons, it was because I knew that I wanted to audition for the school musical. I knew that I wanted to get solos in choir. And I saw some of my other friends who were getting those solos and getting those roles were taking voice lessons. And I was like, this is something that I need to do if I want to get those roles. So there was always this transactional nature of this is a means to an end to be able to do better auditions and get better roles. And this was the first time that I was doing a voice coaching with no performance opportunity on the horizon, with no idea what it was I was trying to create or perform, where it was literally just about sing some exercises, let me listen to your voice and both hear what's happening with the physiology of your voice itself, with the actual mechanics of the sound production. And also let me look at your body when you are creating these sounds and see what is happening. And the thing that Davin said to me today that really stood out was that he was experiencing me as being collapsed. And the physical cue that he gave me a couple of times as we were singing these exercises, or as I was singing these exercises, was to roll my shoulders back, to open through the chest, and to not drop my chin, to keep my chin neutral. And I was like, wow, yeah, why? I really am collapsed through the chest. And yeah, I feel my shoulders slumping forward, and collapsed is not the word I would have come up with on my own. But now that he says it, yeah, I feel that way most of the time. And it's not collapsed in like a lacking self-confidence way, or it's not collapsed in a disempowered or sad or depressed sort of way even. I think it just is the heaviness of everything that has been happening over the past 2 years and this intuitive sense of wanting to protect myself. Also, there are the physical implications of the fact that I haven't really physically exercised much in the past year. I was, prior to the pandemic, swimming multiple times per week, and that was really helping me in my physical recovery, and sitting in the hot tub and going to the sauna at the gym. Like, that was very much helping me in my physical and psychological recovery from the surgery. And then that got cut off. Doing a yoga practice, I don't even feel like doing a yoga practice at home, though it would be perfectly easy to do so. And when I do, I don't really want to push myself very hard physically. I want to just like lay around on my yoga bolster and do some restorative deep breathing. Oh, and deep breathing, yeah, that's hard too, because I still have a sensation of abdominal restriction that makes it feel like I'm wearing a corset every day of my life ever since that surgery back in the beginning of 2019. So yeah, deep breathing, that sucks too. So yeah, I guess my body is feeling really collapsed. And the other thing that he said was that my voice overall sounded weak. Clearly, I know how to sing. Clearly, I have the notes or the range. So like I can sing low notes, I can sing high notes, but neither one of those two areas of my voice felt particularly strong when singing there. And then there was like a disconnect between the low notes and the high notes. And I don't want to go too much into like vocal pedagogy or anything like that, because that's not the point of why I'm telling you this. The point of why I'm telling you this is because there is a moment in which you realize that the thing that you love to do so much, that you have loved to do your entire life. I remember singing my first solo, and maybe I don't actually remember it, but I feel like I remember it when I was 4 years old. And how amazing that felt. And part of the work that Davin is doing is not just like, okay, how can we get you back to your best sounding singing voice? How can we expand your range? How can we strengthen your voice? But also, when you are singing, when you are using your voice, what are the stories and the associations that are coming up in your mind? What are the feelings and the emotions that it's bringing up? And so there is this point when you realize that this thing that you have loved to do so much throughout your life, that has been so important to you, to your identity, to how you think of yourself, that thing has become hard. That thing has become less than joyful. That thing has become physically uncomfortable in your body. And what does that actually mean for your sense of self, for your identity, for how you see yourself? And this is important because how you see yourself is tied into your experience of the world, to how other people experience you. I don't want to be interacting with people on a day-to-day basis and them feeling like, yeah, Andrea, she's just really collapsed. That's terrible. That's not the energy that I want to be putting out into the world. That's not how I want to be perceived. And it's definitely not how I think of myself. And I realized that part of this is just not singing as much as I used to, or not having performance venues or outlets or reasons to really be singing much. Part of it is the physical being at home during the pandemic and not exercising and feeling quite literally out of shape. And part of it is also these traumas that have gotten locked in my body and how that is affecting the physiology. There is still so much that needs to be healed. It's like I got to a certain point and now there's all this scar tissue, physical and emotional scar tissue, that needs to be dealt with if I want to live my fullest life from this point forward. And I do. So it's time for a shift. It's time to do something differently. It's time to revisit old patterns and break them and discover something that is new and more authentic to where I am right now at this point of time in my life. I don't want to be coming to a voice coaching session and being transported back to how I felt when I was in college, because quite honestly, I kind of had a traumatic experience, emotionally traumatic experience, being a voice major my freshman year of college. And when I listened to, side note, Davin Youngs has a great podcast called The Sound of You that he started in 2020. And the first episode is just him. All the other episodes are conversations with other singers, but the first episode is just him, in which he is telling his personal music story. And there is so much that is in parallel to mine and so much that I can relate to. And it goes back to this idea that I have discovered is really the point of the creative imposter, the whole point of the creative imposter. I used to think the creative imposter was about imposter syndrome, and it was in the beginning. But now I realize that the creative imposter has evolved and expanded to really be about the intersection between identity and creativity, that place where who we are and what we make mixes and mingles and gets muddy and one affects the other. And you know what I'm talking about because you're here listening to this right now. And if you didn't know what I was talking about, I don't think you'd be here. So yeah, I'm not my voice. I'm not my singing. And yet I am. And these two things, my identity and my voice right now, are inextricably intertwined. And I'm hoping that by exploring my voice now in a new way, with support and help, I'll be able to come out of this with a new understanding of my identity, of who I am, and I won't be collapsed anymore. As I mentioned previously, we are getting close to the end of the episodes that I have recorded for our Not Your Typical Self-Care series. And I don't know what is coming next. To be perfectly honest, I tend to create these little sequences of episodes for the show, exploring a topic based around what is interesting to me or what I'm exploring in my personal or professional life. And I hope that those topics also happen to magically align with you where you are right now in your creative life and work as well. So I've told you a little bit about what is shifting for me creatively, artistically, energetically, personally. I'm curious where you are. What is happening for you right now? What challenges or obstacles are you coming up against in your creative life and work? What questions are you exploring? How is your sense of self tied to what you are or aren't creating right now coming out of this pandemic? Hopefully, fingers crossed. I'd really love to know. There are a few ways you can clue me in. Number one, you could join me in our free community on Mighty Networks, the Creative Impostor Collective, by heading over to thecreativeimpostor.com/community, share in the online forum, or join one of our twice weekly community Zoom sessions, and we'll talk about it face to face in a totally judgment-free, comfortable, supportive setting. Two, you could email me, Andrea at thecreativeimpostor.com. And if you want to get super fancy, attach a voice memo, record a little something on your phone or on your computer, and just let me know what is happening for you in your creative life and work right now. What questions do you have? What are you coming up against? What would you like to hear more about on the show? Or, of course, you can just type it out in an email the boring old way, or you can DM me on Instagram at thecreativeimpostor. Also, if you like this style of episode and you want to hear more from me in this one-on-one, off-the-cuff fashion, if you're curious to follow along with my voice journey, if you want more of my personal thoughts and musings on the interview episodes that we're releasing here on The Creative Impostor, I would love to invite you to join me on Patreon. Patreon is a monthly paid subscription platform. Currently, I have giving levels set at $3, $9, and $27 per month, and every single subscription level is exactly the same. So it's totally up to you what you feel like is possible and worth the content that you're receiving. This is where you can get access to a private podcast feed called Craft and Culture, in which I'm sharing more behind the scenes reflections on the various Podcast Envy and Creative Impostor interview episodes, and more of my personal journey, in the hopes that it helps you to realize that you are not alone on this creative path and inspires some ideas, windows, insights, who knows, into your creative life and work. You can get more details and subscribe at thecreativeimpostor.com/bonus for all of that bonus content you are going to get. And this is perfect timing too, because I'm realizing that with my current workload with clients and students, I am not able to put as much time and energy into producing episodes of this show as I would like. And therefore, I've gotten a little bit behind my own production schedule. And so I think I'm going to give myself a little bit of leeway and set an intention for myself to release 2 episodes a month for a little while. And if you would like to hear from me more frequently than that, then the Craft and Culture feed on Patreon is the way to go. This episode was mixed by Edwin Ruiz. Our theme music is by Jovia Armstrong. I thank you so much for listening. And this week, I invite you to take a pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, so if you're being honest, what is it that needs to shift?